Liftoff of mission 41B. First flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
All right, well, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Health or High Water podcast. We want to thank the listeners for liking, subscribing, and sharing. If you haven't, please do so. That would be great for all of us. Also, we want to thank Bangladesh for coming in the fold. We also have another country here, Hungary, last week. We have our first downloads down there, so you guys welcome. Welcome to the fold. We got a blog up on our website. You guys got to check out that correlates with our podcast. You guys got to go out there. Also, we've got an amazing guest here. Amelia, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Trip. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually really liking this dreary weather. This heat this weekend killed me.
I'm all about the dreary weather. Bring it on.
Give me that Zoloft weather. So I met Amelia do some dementia classes over at Rosemark. And for those of you guys who don't know, my mom has dementia. About 3 years ago, actually 3 years to the month, she had a stroke, turned dementia, vascular dementia, and had to go and take care of her for a little while. I went to Amelia's lecture here this past year and absolutely fell in love with the information that she was giving, as well as the support that you give, which is thank you so much for that.
Of course. Thanks for sharing about your mom, because I think that's important for people to hear it.
Well, no worries. I think we would have to relate a lot too. And one of the things I love about your classes, and we'll get into your history here in a second. You get me all jazzed up with what you're doing. Is you bring the families involved that might not even go to your communities, right? Hey, let's learn about what dementia is. Let's learn about how this all works. So that's just a huge tool that a lot of like me included didn't know when I got into this. Was like, well, is my family just like screwed? Or like,
yeah, no, it's so true. And I think dementia is a community disease.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about how there can be so much stigma, and I think just like you sharing that your mom has dementia, someone hearing that might think, oh, wow, well, if he can talk about it, maybe I can think about it or talk about it. And so I think that's the best way to do it is as a community.
Oh, 100%, because that's how we learn.
Yeah.
That's how you learn. And I'm going on a tangent real quick, but, there's like, youth sports are having such a negative participation rate. I learned a lot of my ethics through those things.
Yeah.
So time for another episode. But anyway, Amelia, tell me how you got into senior care, especially with dementia. How did this all come about?
Yeah. When I was 4 years old, and this is not a lie, this is my mom told me, when I was 4 years old, I was like an old lady already. So she pretty much knew that's where my life would go, is working with older adults. And I didn't really know until college. I had an 84-year-old next door neighbor who did not have any family. So I was living off campus in this apartment. Here I was like an 18-year-old kid, and I was meeting my neighbor. And every time I saw her, I would re-meet her. She did not remember us meeting. And then she invited me over for dinner. And when I went to her house, I looked in her refrigerator, and it had all rotten, spoiled food in it. So I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. So it piqued my interest. This was pre-internet, I know, pre-World Wide Web days. So I actually went to my local library and learned about Alzheimer's and dementia, and that's what happened. And so it piqued my interest. I started volunteering. Mm-hmm. Then I focused my graduate degree around this. And so I'm one of those lucky people who actually has kind of always known what I wanted to do.
Wow, that is awesome. There's so many people that just are kind of floundering their way through life. And especially with what you're doing, is there's purpose behind it. It's not that far off. We're all going to be that age one day too.
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky, yeah, 100%. So where'd you go to school?
University of Missouri, Columbia.
Shout out.
Yeah, MU. Mizzou.
Go. So that's awesome. So you, knowing you want to do this your entire life, you're passionate about it. You have a ton of more experience than probably a lot of other people at that age, right? Being around all of that. So what happened after college? How'd you end up in Denver?
Yeah, so I went to college in Missouri,
Yep.
And I wanted to move somewhere else. So I moved to Portland, Oregon after college because I thought it would be a cool place to live, much like our weather today, kind of that dreary weather. I loved it, and it was my first job at a place called the Alzheimer's Association, which is a nonprofit care support and research organization. Just really loved their mission, loved what they were doing. And so I ended up staying at the Alzheimer's Association for 24 years, which took me from Portland, Oregon to Denver, Colorado for a little sunshine.
There you go.
Which was nice. And then I ended up kind of doing most of the roles at the Alzheimer's Association locally and then nationally. And then was so lucky to happen upon Ascent Living Communities with Tom and Susie Finley. Really serendipitous how our paths crossed, and they said, we've got an opportunity for you. And what I loved about it is they said, come and be our area director of memory care. So every single day I get the opportunity to be in our assisted living memory care communities and get to have fun with, be there for someone who's having a bad day, and get to meet awesome people like you. Seriously, it is the coolest, best kept secret that I think is out there. People have no idea. They think it's depressing. They think, oh my gosh, it must be so hard. Well, of course there are those days, but for the most part, we have the most fun. It is so cool to watch people's growth even through a disease like Alzheimer's or dementia. You know what I'm talking about.
100%.
You're shaking your head because you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing now, and I absolutely love it. I feel so fortunate that I have found yet another thing where I can grow as a person and also have purpose and help others.
Man, that's inspiring as you know what.
No, what, Trip? Tell me.
Yeah, I could put explicit on this podcast if I really need to, but I'd rather not for family's sake.
That's
here.
right. That's right.
But yeah, I use explicit because I think it's important. I mean, we're talking about a huge issue. You were talking about in your class about 100,000 people in Colorado have dementia or Alzheimer's.
Correct. It's over 90,000. And that's honestly just what we call prevalence statistics, because we don't actually diagnose Alzheimer's or dementia and then keep a record of it, a big spreadsheet in the sky or anything. So that's just an overlay of what we think we know. And most of us in the field believe it's more than that. So over 7 million people in the United States. They're talking millions and millions throughout the world. But again, it's hard to find numbers.
Right.
Mostly they're tied to longevity data.
Yeah, and that's got to be hard too. Because again, people like my parents my mom's being taken care of at home. We don't know what the quality is going. I mean, I do call them every day, but for other people that are taking care of home, we don't know the quality of the care they're giving. Or where my mom was, a bucolic location, they didn't have a lot of resources.
Yes, absolutely. Or think about this trip. Think about if your dad wasn't there. Think about if you weren't a son. Think about people who don't have family and don't have people who step in. So there are plenty of people out there living by themselves. And so that is why I think we need these social systems to watch out for each other. And I was telling you about my neighbor in college.
Yeah.
She didn't have family. They were in a few states away, but they weren't there every day. And so what I was able to see in her every day. And so I just checked in on her. That's all I did. That's what it became, was this 2 years of checking in on my neighbor who I worried so much about.
Well, that's so sweet that you did that. I'm sure, you're getting some karma points. For
I
sure.
hope so. I learned a lot from her too, though. She was really cool. She was a fashion diva.
Okay. All right. And, even with memory care and stuff like that. Now, I know they're not the most bodily expressive than us. We talk a lot with our hands, those kind of things. But during class, you get these micro expressions that are, I don't know. For me, it's just so incredible to see that there's still tons going on in there, and that they can get happy, and they can exercise, they can they can interact. So it's really cool to see those micro expressions. You're talking about seeing them grow every week. They do grow every week.
Yeah.
Especially in class, they're punching harder, they're breathing better, right? They can grow, they can learn. I think that's a misconception, really, with people who are just they're just stuck.
Yeah. No, and it's so true. I think it's because we only think of human beings as intellectual beings,
right?
Or we think of memory as being everything, but we're a soul and a spirit. And I think we forget about that, and yet sometimes that soul and spirit comes out. I have just this story I have to tell you.
Hear it.
There was a woman who was in a memory care, and she shared a room with another resident. And the daughter of that other resident told me this story. She said, when the night my mom died, it was very difficult. She was her best friend, and her mom had died of dementia, and no one knew. It was just she and her mom. She saw her mom take her last breath. And before she knew it, she was crying. Before she knew it, she felt a hand on her shoulder, and it was her mother's roommate, who was someone who really was not, she never thought she was aware of what was going on around her. She chanted all day. She never was someone she held a conversation with. And she said that resident would not leave her side until everyone else came in and was there, and then she stepped away. So you hear stories like that, and you think, you can't tell me that there is not still a soul and spirit, or that someone can only be identified as a person of value based on whether they remember your name or whether they remember facts from, 2 years ago. So I really deeply not only believe it, but I feel it and I see it every day. And so I would love to change how we think about people. I think now is a time we can do that, because I feel like we have a lot of challenges around us, and we're challenging how we think about human beings on the spectrum,
right,
or how we think about mental health. So it's a time for us to think about aging and cognitive disorders differently too.
No, I absolutely love that, because that's where things are going anyway. Just what we do here, like with our genetic tests, like figuring out what happens ahead of time, so we can come up with these preventive measures. We got a downstream problem. It really takes an upstream thought how to help with those kind of things. So do you see things like preventive health, genetic testing, wearable tech? Do you see that this is where things are going, so we have a better quality of life when we get to a place like retirement community?
Yeah, absolutely do. So first of all, June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, so it is a good focus time. I'm not sure when this will be airing, but
Friday.
Hey,
there
right on. So, it's really a time to think about brain health, and what do we know about brain health today? And what's really ironic is, we knew a lot about brain health in 1950, but then over the years we kind of said, what did we really know? Well, we knew more than we thought we knew. Yeah. So there's a lot about brain health and your physical health, kind of your heart health and how important that is for your brain, but also our social connections with one another.
Yes.
And so, if that means that we use technology to keep us socially connected to other people, then I say go technology.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's do it, whatever it takes. And so, I think that it's not just the brain health from heart health, but also and exercise, the importance of keeping your body moving, right? And keeping the blood flowing to your brain. But it's that importance of staying active and curious in life, which technology can help with that as well, especially if people have physical barriers that may make it difficult. There's a lot that can be done in other ways. Yeah, so that can help our brain health. And then also thinking about the brain as, it is our control center. So it's not just about memory or intellectual kinds of things. That's also creativity. Yeah. There is still so much room and life for creativity. And in fact, I think sometimes people have leaned more on the side of their intellectual side and more on their memory, and maybe thought some of the creativity wasn't as important, and yet we're finding it's very important for your brain.
Man, that's so interesting you said that. So when I was first taking care of Mom, I didn't know what activities to do. I didn't want anything to be demeaning to her. You know what I mean? I wanted her to feel good about it. Hey, I'm not treating you like a lesser person of it. But we had some old coloring books from my brother's kids, and I was like, let me give it a whirl. I'll try anything, And she started going crazy with the coloring books.
Yes.
She was like, I used to love drawing when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's something I should have thought of before about capturing that creativity.
Yeah.
Because it wants to come out, obviously.
It does. And think about this. Most of us live our lives each day and hope we have at least some level of success in whatever we're doing. Yeah. Even if it's just getting up and getting dressed. And for a lot of people who are starting to lose those abilities, they need to be successful at other things. And my gosh, look at the puzzle that they just put together. Or look at this, look at the amazing colors they picked. And the eye-hand coordination and the patterns. So there's a lot we underestimate. And I think if you are more present and in the moment, then you can actually be part of that. There's a famous nature photographer, John Fielder. He's from Colorado. He was a caregiver for his wife who had younger onset Alzheimer's. And he was he was so famous for capturing these amazing scenes of the mountains and the beautiful lakes. And he actually said his photography changed when his wife got Alzheimer's because she helped him notice the little tiny flowers along the trail. And she helped him notice things, the way rocks looked next to the trail. When he was off looking at the distance, she kept him right here in the moment and in the presence. And so there's some beauty in that too.
No, 100%. I think that's really awesome because I'm again similar. I used to take my mom with me to the gym.
Yeah.
I did also do with like let's go to the gym. She might not lift any weights, but she'll just hang out and be a part of an environment. And I was picking up some heavy weights, and she stands up and like pats the weights. It's like that's too heavy.
Oh my gosh, I
Just
love
like
that.
just trying to be a part of it. And the reason I say that is because you're talking about that wife being a part of the painting, right? There is something to including this demographic of people that makes them happy, right? Just to be part of something little like happy hour or painting or music that we do.
Or boxing.
Or boxing, yeah. A little shout out on boxing class. Yeah, but to be included in something. And one of the best compliments we ever got was you can't tell who's in memory care and who's in assisted living when we do the boxing classes.
Exactly.
You see them come alive to this whole different different person, really. Like you said, they're in there when you include them.
Yes.
Right. I think a lot of times we like put grandma on the side for a second and I'll let her do her thing. It's like, no, bring them apart. Like you said, use that brain of theirs.
Yes.
Have them included.
I think we're afraid of making mistakes.
Yes.
So we end up doing nothing, and we end up because we don't want to be awkward or we don't want to do the wrong thing. And that is, I would say, take the risk. Take a moment, even if you make a mistake. Yes. So many times I've said, I'm sorry, I really screwed that up. It's about what makes your boxing successful, if I can just give you a little plug.
Thank you so much.
Yes, it's the boxing, but not really. It's you. It's the way you and Brett come in and you embrace people as people, because people mirror each other. If you get off right, you get back what you give, and that is no more true with any other group than it is with people with Alzheimer's and dementia. They pick up on your energy, they will give it right back to you. So I think that mirroring of energy is why the boxing is so successful, because you all accept and love them as the people they are. You give them the energy, and you have fun. Which is so cool.
Well, thank you so much. You got to have fun.
Yeah.
And you got to come in with like an energy, like you said, like they. But if you do come with that energy, they give it right back, and you leave class like, I didn't know I had that much energy left. Like, really? That's crazy. Well, speaking of all these activities and those kind of things, we talked a lot about physical fitness, those kind of things. We haven't really talked much about maybe someone at home that might be concerned that their loved one might have dementia and Alzheimer's. What are some signs that some people can see? What are things to look out for as we age? Just some general stuff that that might help us learn a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, because I actually think it's very underdiagnosed. So people are dealing with it for sometimes 2 to 3 years before they even realize what's happening. And so actually online you can get the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, which could also be dementia, because really what they are is 10 signs that something's wrong. Right. We just don't know what it is. Right. And so one that we all think of, I think, is memory loss. Someone's repeating a story, repeating a question, or saying, well, I haven't talked to you in forever. Well, we just talked last night, right? So that short-term memory loss is definitely one of the big signs we see. But some that we don't think about really are personality changes. Someone who is always very neat might start getting kind of sloppy. Someone who is always very kind and loving and generous might get really angry and say terrible things. So you can see personality changes and mood swings that come in as part of those warning signs as well. And then I always like to say just a big change from who the person has always been. If someone was always very smart with money and smart and good with, a budget, and now all of a sudden, their electricity is being turned off because they didn't pay that bill, that's a sign that something is not right. And oftentimes it's something like Alzheimer's or dementia. So I would go look up those 10 warning signs. I always tell people, look at those and think about the past year, 18 months, 2 years, if you've seen those happening increasingly. And now it's interesting, I think people are more diagnosed now than they were, 20 years ago when I was working in the field. But people still get misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, because it is kind of opening a can of worms. And there's not like one test you can take that tells you. It's a whole battery of tests. So it's understandable. They just this year approved a blood test for Alzheimer's disease. The FDA just approved a blood test. That's a big deal.
Huge.
I have not talked to anyone who's actually used that. I'm sure there are, but it just happened this year. And I'd say, once we improve the ability to diagnose, we hopefully can improve the ability to treat people as well and have the right treatments.
And I love that. You spent quite a bit of time too on medications. Right, tons of medications. My mom was on a ton of different stuff, and one of them was on the board that you had on there. But you did mention a new medication that seems to be kind of promising.
Yes.
You want to maybe mention a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
So there are 3 medications. The newest is Kisunla.
Okay.
Right. And that's probably the one. Leqembi and Kisunla are the 2 that are most often diagnosed or prescribed, approved in 2021 and 2023. So brand new. They are given through infusion, though. So it's not a pill form yet.
Interesting, okay.
And part of it is because they are so very new, they have not yet found the compound to put it in a little bottle and make it a pill. They have found those to be quite successful. In fact, they are considering those what they call disease-altering drugs.
Oh.
Whereas before, all of the medications for Alzheimer's specifically were kind of Band-Aids to help improve the symptoms.
And kind of slow it down too, right?
Exactly. It didn't really change the underlying components of the disease. These new medications, that is the hope for these. And there are over 150 medications in some phase of an FDA trial for Alzheimer's or dementia. So each iteration of those we know usually is an improvement upon itself. So that's what we hope. And again, Alzheimer's and dementia, you talked about your mom having vascular dementia. Some of the medications may help, but some may harm. So like people who have Parkinson's dementia and Alzheimer's, they really shouldn't be taking the medications for the other. So it is important to get the right medical treatment, and which can be hard in rural communities. It can be hard in, when there's health insurance questions or Medicare questions. So but it is important to get the right treatment.
100%. It took me 6 months to get an MRI for mom's brain.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a neurologist on staff anywhere in the county. But it's also more important here too about like us going to get checked, right, and seeing those warning signs like you were talking about, and I would say being a little bit closer to our loved ones so we can understand those warning signs.
Yes.
It's like, grandma is forgetting her keys quite a bit, and she's getting kind of ornery.
That's always been grandma.
That's always been grandma. We got to stop, using her stairs as a jungle gym.
That's right.
So we've got some medications that are looking pretty promising. 150 that are in the chamber. It seems like every medication that is being released by the FDA is better and better and better. I know I didn't see any results from my mom's medication, and I think it's because the vascular dementia was kind of hard. But what about preventive measures?
Yeah.
Right? What are some things that we can do? I know it's impossible to walk out of front and then not, you can always get hit by a bus.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
There's that kind of things that could always happen. But what are some things that we can do in a year, hopefully at an early age, to make sure that those don't happen?
Yeah, we should be doing these right now, actually.
Boom.
And the good news is most of these things are free, have very few side effects. All they require is some habit changes and discipline, which may be hard to come by. But first thing we talked about is your diet. So really, if you look at our diet, especially in America, I know you have listeners from all over the world, so you have different kinds of diets. But if there was one diet we could pick to sort of morph toward, it would be the Mediterranean diet. Or they call it the MIND, M-I-N-D diet, which is kind of a combination of Mediterranean and reduction in hypertension diet.
Okay.
So think about fish versus red meat, nuts, nut oils versus butter, green leafies, all those berries, all of those things that we know are good for us. Olive oil, throw some olive oil in there next time you're sauteing. Yeah, exactly. So that's very helpful, because what that does is it can reduce your cholesterol, it can reduce your risk of diabetes, it can reduce all of those numbers that we know shouldn't be high, that we want to get lower. And what that does is it helps your arteries, because what's good for your heart is good for your brain. You want to keep that blood flow going. You don't want anything to get in the way or slow it down. So that would also include exercise. So when I say exercise, it could be Zumba, it could be boxing, it could be biking, it could be walking at a higher, getting your heart rate up.
Yeah.
But a few times a week, 30 to 60 minutes, just 30 minutes, 3 times a week, if you get your heart rate up, they have shown in lots of research that has really helped keep your heart healthier, again, keeping your brain healthier. If you think about the blood flowing,
Yeah.
your heart's pumping, goes right up to your brain. I think they said your brain takes 20 to 25% of your blood and oxygen from your heart, which is
not
amazing,
more.
right? So those are two important things, but there are other things. So keeping your brain active would be learning new things, discovering new things, learning new facts, listening to this podcast. I've looked at your podcast. You've talked about everything on this podcast. It is so cool. So learning new things is important because it builds builds neuron activity, synapses in your brain, and it builds what's called cognitive reserve, which is basically your brain's ability to be agile. Just like, why you exercise certain muscles in your body so that if you're starting to fall, you can catch yourself, right? Same with your brain. You want your brain to be able to be adaptable and agile, but that only happens through learning new things. So it's not just crossword puzzles, because if you've always done crossword puzzles, it's probably not helpful. Maybe learn a new language. I talked to an 86-year-old who's learning Vietnamese the other day.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. This is our 5th language. So that's important. So use it or lose it is important for your brain.
Yeah.
And then we talked earlier about the importance of social connections. They find that even if you just have 1 or 2 people in your life who you are in contact with, maybe you go out to eat, maybe you're at church, maybe it's your neighborhood.
Right.
That improves lots of different metrics, not just your brain health, but also your overall, how long you live, your overall heart health.
Right.
So I would say start line dancing because
There you
you've
go.
got music, you have to learn a new dance, and you're with other people, right?
I love that. So some things I really loved what you said too, and this just comes from me being in fitness since pretty much I was 12 years old. You were talking about olive oil and fats. Now, typically, for all listeners, like fats are demonized here in America. Your myelin sheath in your brain is made of fat. That's how electricity goes from neuron to neuron. So don't get rid of fats. I love what you said about that, right? Sometimes we just deprive our brain of necessities.
Yes, absolutely.
And then with exercise too, I gotta agree. My mom was on like 8 different statins. Now I do understand that there's a certain like 25 to 35% decreased risk of another stroke, but working out, that's like 90%.
Yes.
Something like 90-something%.
Yes.
As well as 1 out of 2 women develop osteoporosis. So how do we combat osteoporosis? Those kind of things. Resistance training, working out.
Yep.
I love what you're talking about too, because I don't know if you've heard of something called blue zones.
Are you kidding me? I love the blue zones.
So you talk about mentality, like I'm like, yes, it's exactly what I want to, I want to hear from, these dementia and Alzheimer's programs,
Yes.
right? They all have music, they all have movement, they all have minerals and vitamins, they all have mentality.
Yep.
All of them.
Do your listeners know about the blue zones?
We did a half episode on
Okay,
it.
cool.
A little bit
Yeah.
on it. I think that's something you and I can get into depth
Yeah.
sometime.
Definitely.
We have to have you come back on here.
Because part of it's also purpose.
Right.
Right? Do you have a purpose? What's your purpose in waking up? A lot of people don't know why. What's the point? Like, why get dressed? Why get up? So creating a purpose each day in your life. Now, there are some days you don't want to have to get up, but if you have a purpose in general in your life, that's really important. And so we created a program called Bridge to Belonging specifically on the blue zones. So how do we help people who are in that phase where it's just they're not feeling it. They don't feel like they belong anywhere. They don't what's the point? And it's really getting them up and going is such an important part, that inertia.
Oh, 100%, because you see the ones that start off like working out, they're groggy, super groggy, slow to get going. But once they get going, man,
Yeah.
they get going.
Yeah, because you have to wake up the brain too. Just like you have to wake up your muscles, you got to wake up your brain. And so if you're trying to engage with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia and they look at you like a blank stare, don't give up. Take that extra step. Sing a song, start to play some music, maybe start moving a little, maybe start boogieing a little, right? And because it does wake up the brain, and then you truly do see a shift in people.
Oh, 100%. I love that. One of the things I started doing with Mom was I played music in the morning.
Yes.
It's huge. Like while she's doing her bathroom stuff, like playing some music. And it was a good timekeeper for her too. She's like, oh, that song's done. I gotta get up. But I want to thank you so much for coming on Health or High Water today. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you, Trip. This has been an awesome conversation. I think we could do it 3 more times.
You're coming back on. You're 100% coming back on. So Amelia, do you have any more lectures coming up at all?
You know,
Any
we take
plugs
a
to shout
little
out?
we take a little break for the summer just because people are so busy. But
Sure.
likely starting in the fall, we'll do another series. You can go check Ascent Living Communities. We usually try to advertise either on Instagram or Facebook whatever dementia series we have coming up.
Well, I can't wait. What we'll do is once you guys have a schedule for that, let us know and we'll post it on our social media
Awesome.
and give it to all the listeners, making sure that they have it. Now, and again, we have people in Hungary and in India. I'm not sure they're going to make it, but we've got a hardcore demographic here in Colorado. So
Come on down.
come on down. And the talks
Health or
are,
high water.
And again, your talks are amazing. I learned a
Thank
lot.
you.
Even coming from someone who did a ton of research, used tons of ChatGPT, I still learned an immense amount dementia and Alzheimer's from you. So thank you for what you're doing with the community.
Thank you. And I bet you could teach as well, because I always feel like, you know, the more you learn, the more you teach, the more you pass it on. We talked about storytelling. That's important too. So, you know, learning from other caregivers is a really important part of getting through something like this.
Well, thanks. We've been doing a few lectures. We got a few at Koya, had a lecture at Rosemark a few months ago, and then down at Cavwood, we did a hip health lecture over there too, because that's so important.
Cool.
We're trying. It's hard. You know, the education portion is probably the biggest portion for people, whether you're the resident or the family members.
Yeah, so true.
But I'd love to come speak if you want to have me. I'd love to, and we'll plug your information. You get your LinkedIn and stuff. Is that okay? People reach out.
Absolutely. Yep.
Perfect. So we'll
Absolutely.
plug your LinkedIn in there. We'll plug Ascent Living Communities in there, and I'll try to tag Rosemark and other ones in there. But man, thank you so much for just an amazing conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, if you guys like what you hear here, make sure you guys check out Amelia. Check out Ascent Living Communities. They are doing absolutely fantastic work. Go down to Rosemark at 6 o'clock or 3:30 on Fridays for happy hour. We have an absolute blast. It's packed, like 65 people in this small lobby. It's so much fun. They're doing some amazing things, so make sure you guys are checking them out, especially if you guys have questions like loved ones that might be going through Alzheimer's, dementia. Please feel free to reach out to Ascent. Feel free to reach out to Amelia. It's better safe than sorry, so make sure you guys get checked ahead of time and make sure you guys are taking care of your loved ones. But make sure you like, subscribe, share. Thank you guys so much. This was Health or High Water.